everyone, welcome to another video. I have a very quick and easy Christmas card to share with you today, and I only use 2 stamps, which makes it even better. So both stamps I'm going to be using today are from Cracker Box and Susie Stamps. As always, all the supplies that I'm using today, stamps, inks, markers, that kind of thing, it's all going to be listed and linked down in the description box. So if you have any questions, you can head down there and always find the answer to that. So I'm starting off with the Christmas lights. It's a Christmas strand of lights stamp, and I am going to be using the Catherine Pooler Midnight ink to do my stamping today. I am using this ink because it plays well with my alcohol markers, which is what I'm using to color these in just a moment. I'm also stamping on a piece of white cardstock. This is heavyweight white cardstock that is A2, so 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Now I'm going to start stamping these little strands of lights and trying to connect them to one another. If you get little gaps, that's okay. It's not a big deal. We'll fix that in just a minute, so it's really not that big of a deal. But basically what I'm going to do is continue to stamp this stamp over and over to fill up this background. Now I'm just eyeballing this, making sure to move this a little bit to the left or the right whenever I'm starting out. That way each strand or each row of lights isn't going to look exactly the same. So I'll make sure that I continue to do that. I'll continue to stamp all the way down the panel. I am stamping on a piece of computer paper. I have that behind my panel. That's going to catch all the excess ink that comes off the left or the right side. That way I have less chance of smudging on my background. Now to finish this off, I am going to use the very tip or bottom of those little bulbs to stamp on the top. This is just going to give it that nice finished look, so it looks more like real pattern paper that you would buy and cut up. You're not going to have exactly all of the little images exactly on the panel. So like I said, if you have any little places where your strands don't connect and you've got that little bit of white space, just come back in when you're done stamping with the black pen and connect all those little strands. You could also space these out a little bit if you wanted to and add curls if you wanted to in your strands, that kind of thing. You could heat emboss this as well and make them nice and shiny. I'm just going for a very flat card and I'll add a little bit of dimension later on. So I went ahead and just stamped with black and finished off connecting them with a black pen. Now to color these all in, like I said before, I'm using my alcohol markers. You can use whatever color scheme you want to here. I went ahead and chose rainbow. So I'm using the Roy G. Biv like I normally do, and I'm going to go ahead and first fill in all of my red markers. So I'm counting, and every 7th one I'm going to go ahead and color in with my red. Now this takes a little bit of time the first color you do, so my red's going to take a little bit of time. However, once you get this first color down, it's going to go very quickly because you can just go to the next one and the next one and the next one and continue coloring them in. Now that is going to save you time in the long run instead of capping and uncapping markers the whole entire time. I don't like to leave my markers uncapped for a long time. So just coming in and coloring these all in, adding the shading to all of them, and then coloring in and kind of blending out really saves me quite a bit of time to just go in with one marker at a time. So I'm on my yellow ones now. I'm putting those next to the oranges and then moving on to the greens. And like I said before, I am adding shading to these. It's not going to be really noticeable. However, it does add a little bit more depth and interest, which is nice on a simple card like this. So I come in with my lightest color, put a layer of that down. Then I like to come in with my darker shade. I'm adding just a little bit to the left-hand side. Then I come back in with my lighter shade and blend that out all over the light bulbs. So I'm keeping all of my darkest on the left-hand side of these bulbs, and I'm doing that with every single color. So here I'm finally on my last color. You can see with purple, I'm coming in with my lightest, filling in the entire light bulb. Then I come in with my darker, add my little bit of shading with a little line right on the left-hand side there. Then once I get all of those filled in with that little bit of darker color, I can come back in with my lighter color and blend that out. And that finishes off the background. It was super easy and super quick to do. And just taking the time to go in and find all the ones that need to be red first and that kind of thing, that really saved me a lot of time in the long run. Now, once that was done, I did have a little bit of a splotch, so I used the mono sanding eraser. I don't know, it's new to me. You could use a sanding block too to clean that up. And then I also had a little bit where the ink bled outside of the line, so I just used a white gel pen to cover that up. I wanted to add a little frame to this. So I'm going to go ahead and layer up two rectangle dies. One is a scallop, it's on the outside, and then I've got a smaller rectangle on the inside. I run that through my die cutting machine and that creates this little frame. I used a black glitter paper for that. You could use plain black cardstock if glitter isn't your thing. And then I went ahead and cut out the center of my panel that I colored on with the lights. I cut out the center of that with the smallest rectangle from the inside of my little layered up dies. That's going to create a little opening where then I can stamp my greeting. So I'm going to stamp my greeting directly on my card base. I went ahead and loaded my card base and my panel right on top of that so I could center in the greeting in that little rectangle that I cut out. I can remove that top panel and then stamp down my sentiment. I am using my mini Misty for this. If you don't have a Misty or stamp positioner, just position that panel right over the top. You could even tape it into place temporarily and then stamp down your greeting right in the center and you're good to go. So I went ahead and stamped this down a couple times. I'm using the Catherine Pooler Midnight ink because that's what I used on the front of the card and it works great for greetings too. Here's a closer look at that greeting. I love, love, love the script on this. I think it's gorgeous. So once that was good to go, it was time to start kind of putting the front together. So I'm going to go ahead and attach that frame first. I'm using a liquid glue for this. It's a very thin frame, so I find that liquid glue works the best. And also, you can have that little bit of playtime to move it around and get it perfectly over that little opening. So go ahead and position that right over the rectangle, and because I use the same die, it'll fit like a puzzle piece. Now I want to go ahead and use my white gel pen on the front of the card to add a few final little details. So what I first want to do is to go ahead and add a little line and dot to the left side of each light bulb. This is going to add that little bit of a shiny look. I will come back in and add even more detail in a minute, but for right now I just want to add this, and I did do that to every single light bulb on this panel. I know it takes a little bit of time, it's a little tedious. However, I think it's well worth it, especially on a background like this when you don't have a whole lot going on. It's the same image repeated over and over. I like to add these final little touches. I think it really helps the card come to life. Now, if you have a white gel pen and you're doing this and you find that it's not giving you out the amount of ink you want, scribble it on your hand a little bit or your fingertip to warm up the ball in it, and it should start flowing a little bit better. There's a closer look at that. Then it was time to mount this onto the front of the card base. I am using some dimensional adhesive on the front just to pop it up and kind of set it away from the greeting. I find that that adds a little bit of interest to this plain card as well. Now you want to make sure that you get all the glitter, if you use glitter paper, out of your way first. I also like to open the card base and then go ahead and put on my front panel. I find that just works out a little bit easier so it's not flopping around. Now, before I finished off the front, I did come to the inside, and I actually did the inside while I had the frame drying off to the side, but I wanted to go ahead and put this in right here. Now, I wanted to color in a little strand of lights on the inside of the card. However, alcohol markers bleed like crazy, so I didn't want that to bleed on the back side of the card, and I didn't want to add another panel. So I grabbed out my Arteza markers and colored those in with just one color, and it worked beautifully. I used the same Catherine Pooler ink, and then I could go ahead and finish the outside of the card. So I wanted to add just a very, very tiny bit of glossy accents to each one of the little light bulbs to add that little bit of shine and dimension to finish this card off. Again, a little bit tedious, but I think it adds that extra little touch. So I went ahead and put a little drop of that on each light bulb, and that finished off the card for today. I love simple cards like this, and only using 2 stamps is amazing when making a card. It really makes life a lot easier. Here are a few final pictures as well. I think whenever I make simple cards like this, finding creative ways to really kind of add those final little details and touches to take it up a notch from a very clean and simple card to something a little more fun is always so much fun. There are going to be links on the left side of your screen that you can click on. You can subscribe to my channel over there as well. You will find all of my social media links down in the description box. Thank you guys for watching and happy crafting.